Elbows up. That's what we kept hearing from Prime Minister Mark Carney during the federal election campaign. Well, the campaign is over. Mark Carney won with his elbows up rhetoric, but the reality is now it's time to govern. And here's the hard facts. 77% of our exports go to the United States of America. If Canada wants to avoid a very deep recession, we need to deal with the Trump administration, despite some of the things that President Trump has said over the past number of months. Now, reportedly, Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to go to the White House in the next number of days or possibly week. And that is a very good thing because it is time to negotiate with the Trump administration, not time to put our elbows in their face. Only 15% of American exports go to Canada versus 77% of Canadian exports going to the United States. Canada needs the Americans a lot more than the Americans need us, and we have to deal with them. And that is why it is good that Carney is going to go down there, but he's got to go down there and actually deal with President Trump and not just have the kind of campaign bluster that we've heard for the past number of weeks. Now, Mark Carney also has some work to do here at home. He set a July 1st deadline to have real internal free trade in Canada, and that date is rapidly approaching. Now, it's sad that I have to say this, but it is easier for Canadian provinces to trade with a number of other countries than it is for them to trade with each other. And that is because we have domestic trade barriers in Canada that are costing the economy roughly $200 billion a year, according to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. That is something that needs to be dealt with and dealt with quickly. Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island have all tabled legislation that would help make that reality, but the other provinces need to follow suit, and Mark Carney needs to make sure that they do. The final thing that Carney should be doing in the next number of weeks is abandoning his radical net zero ideology that he has been spreading for the past number of years. Now, over the past 10 years, the Liberal government has stood in the way of $670 billion of natural resource projects that would have made our country a lot richer and would have made us less dependent on the Americans. It is time to get some of those resource projects done. Now, Mark Carney seemed to indicate in English that he was open to some new pipelines during the campaign, but then say a different thing in French. It is time for Carney to come clean and state his real position on our natural resources. The reality is, Alberta and Saskatchewan, they did not vote for the Liberals, for the most part, because of this issue. And we need to deal with the fact that we are going to have some Western alienation in Canada if the federal government keeps standing in the way of natural resource projects. We have to get our oil and natural gas to market. That is good for the world. It's good for our Canadian economy, and it would actually reduce global emissions to do so. So now is the time for Mark Carney to abandon his radical net zero ideology. It is also time for Mark Carney to make sure we get our internal free trade barriers down in Canada by Canada Day. And it is finally time for him to go down to the United States, deal with the Trump administration, and stop with the elbows up rhetoric that might have been good for the campaign, but it is not good for the country and it's not good for governing.